Thank you very much for your attention. I look forward to your questions. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thanks, Jeff.
Okay, we're gonna take some questions from the audience until we run out of time. So with that said, let's bring up the house lights a little bit so it's easier to see people's hands. And since we asked a lot of questions on this side of the room, today we'll start taking questions from that side of the room. So anybody over there have a question, raise your hand. And hopefully,
some in here.
Okay. We've got a microphone. Where is it?
Here.
Okay, now we can see. Who's got the question? Okay.
So I think a fundamental question hasn't been answered yet, and maybe I'm just not reading between the lines, but are we in a cyber warfare situation? And if yes, what is going to be, when is the time going to come when public and private truly band together as partners to resolve the situation or help resolve the situation in combat this cyber warfare situation?
Yeah. You know, you can say you're in cyber war, but you have to accept the subset of definitions. So you've got to accept that you believe it constitutes war down here in the espionage exploitation area of kind of the spectrum of conflict. So if you want to say it that way, I would, and then that'd be okay. But again, it's not in our own thinking. We don't think what it is we do when we do C&E to be an act of war. It is that normal espionage thing that's based upon long-standing international practice that routinely happens between and among states, and that's really the legal background for it. Your question generates one other thing I should have mentioned from the CFR group, because their theory was that if you get states to self-limit, if you get states to to limit what it is they do on the internet, state activity there is so pronounced that if states begin to not do some of the things that they are doing, you will lower the noise level on the net, and the truly malevolent activity that is not espionage but is destructive or criminal, the truly malevolent activity will become more visible and easier to prevent. So it's kind of a corollary to what you suggested.
Anybody over on this side of the room? Way back there?
Okay.
We'll send a runner down. Sorry you don't have any lights down there. It's the hangover section.
We made it. You started to talk about how you guys are trying to define sort of like cyber-type rules of engagement in a war. Does this mean that since it's so possible for like a 15-year-old script kiddie to do something in a foreign country that he could set off international conflict possibly because these rules have been defined and he crossed the boundary accidentally, that you'll start to come into taking away the anonymous access that we have on the net as it stands? And that's how you're going to police that, keep people from being able to do this internationally.
Yeah. I'm not quite there in my thinking, but you're reflecting a lot of what I'm thinking about. Right now, in many ways, the biggest obstacle of taking how we usually think about these things and importing it into how we think about it in the cyber world is the aspect of attribution. All right? So if re-engineering could be done to some extent that softens or eases the attribution problem, then much more of traditional thinking could be brought in to thinking about operations, defense, attack, exploitation in cyberspace. I thought you were going another place with your question, so let me just add the additional thought. One of the things that I'm seeing reflected now is that since the price of entry of this is so low and actors act, and they're not state or state-sponsored, or it's very difficult to us to prove they're state-sponsored, one of the thoughts that's kind of rattling around now is to just be uninterested in that distinction and to actually hold states responsible for activity emanating from their sovereign space, and that the rest of the world is indifferent whether the state's doing it or not. The consequences for that action are the same. Okay, and that may be another way to kind of slice away at the implications of anonymity.
All right, let's go to the other side of the room then. Anybody over here with questions?
Here we go.
Okay,
right in the center.
go for it.
Morning, sir. Referencing what you said about power grids and denial of service attacks and the possibility of nations getting together, holding hands, singing Kumbaya, and just saying we aren't going to do that. One, do you believe that that's an actual viable solution, that our enemies would really do that and abide by that? And if not, why is that even an option on the table?
Yeah, and in fact, the American pushback, we have been really late to any international discussions on, what's the right word, arms limitations in cyberspace or control. I mean, fill in the blank, but you get the sense. We're not real anxious to go to Geneva or The Hague and sit down with 80 other nations and begin to huddle up about this. All right, there has been a weakening of that American resolve. I see it in the Council on Foreign Relations. I see it in State Department. They're actually beginning to suggest going to some meetings, not negotiations, going to some meetings. And Keith Alexander, the commander of Cyber Command, in the past 7 to 10 days, actually said that publicly, that we would benefit from some international discussions on these things. Arms limitations, I think, are absolutely off the table because they are totally unverifiable. And don't go there, don't do that. But the broader establishment of international norms among responsible and powerful states and sanctions for the violations of those norms doesn't have quite the effect of treaty. It's not airtight, but it actually may help. Here's an idea that came up in the discussion of the Council on Foreign Relations. I think it had to do with power grids, all right? And it was something along the lines of no American service would penetrate any other nation's power grid absent a presidential finding, all right? And then you make that a declaratory policy. So now the world kind of figures, all right, it's gone to the highest political level. Can't be too numerous. I don't think he does that every day. And then you say, and I'd invite other nations to do the same. All right? Does that mean all power grids are safe? Oh, no. But it may have a beneficial effect. Frankly, I think that's the limit of the art form right now. That's about as good as we can do. But I think everyone's nervous about getting locked in some sort of arms control discussions for weapons that are essentially undetectable and unverifiable.
All right, we have time for one last quick question, and then we'll move on to switching the rooms and general sessions. So, who will be our up right here in the front?
Yes, sir. What's the cyber equivalent?
Wait, so everybody can hear the question?
Yeah.
What's the cyber equivalent of the Incheon Seoul buildup?
When you say Incheon Seoul buildup, you talking about MacArthur landing at Incheon, or
No, I'm talking about
the geography.
megalopolis we've got sitting there.
I don't know, and I turn that back to you. That people whose judgment I trust talk about. I've seen Mike McConnell talk about this, and Mike, former DNI, and now with Booz Allen again. Melissa Hathaway in our panel yesterday said words that echoed this. Now, these are my words, not theirs, but fundamentally, what they're saying is the long-term answer is the re-architecture, so that, I'm making this up, and I'm thinking only by analogy from the physical world, but choke points and things like that, don't stop traffic, but do give the defense some opportunities to position itself. And right now, those are so few and far between that the character of the domain is all advantage goes to the attacker. And that's probably unacceptable for all of us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.